You know, I've got a bunch of questions I'm never going to get any answers to, am I? Well, may as well give it a shot. This is Time Pilot, released in 1983 for Colecovision and based on the 1982 Konami arcade game of the same name. Time Pilot has you in control of a pilot who flies a time-traveling plane who must shoot down a set number of other little planes before destroying a much bigger plane to travel through time and do the whole deal all over again at a later future year. Each time period has you fighting different planes, choppers, and fighter jets that pretty much do the same thing before you loop back to 1910 and do that whole deal all over again, but at a much higher level of difficulty. Now maybe someone can help me out here because I don't get the peculiars of Time Pilot. Am I trying to save the timeline or am I destroying it? It has to be the latter, right? Any one of these planes I shoot down could be someone important down the road and I may have messed things up considerably by killing them potentially. Maybe that's why I loop back to 1910 after a while, so I could go back and fix things, but instead I just keep shooting down more planes. Sometimes you'll have pilots on parachutes that you can collect, possible survivors for bonus points, but what actually happens to them when you collect them? Do you store them in your brig and presumably bring them back to their proper place in time, or you just keep them forever and ever as lab specimens or something? I don't know. Hey, did you know that in the arcade there's a 2001 level where you're shooting down UFOs and then after that you loop back to 1910? But this ColecoVision version is missing that level, so you loop back after 1985. 1985, of course, also happens to be the year when ColecoVision was discontinued and thus forgotten about, so maybe someone saw the writing on the wall in 1983 when they ported this thing. That's a grim thought now that I think about it. These are existential questions that Time Pilot compels you to ask, knowing you'll never get the answers. But anyway, none of that matters. You fly a plane, you shoot down other planes, pretty simple fare on paper, not so much in practice. You move your plane in 4 ways with the stick. A bit of awkward movement at first, but once you get the hang of it, it's not so bad. You only have to worry about shooting things and not hammering the keypad for any extra features, so that's kinda nice. Time Pilot is a fun little arcade game that feels a bit jank on ColecoVision, but fortunately it's not jank enough to make the whole thing unplayable. Your only real hurdle in this version are the controls. You point the stick in a general direction you want to move, but the plane has to turn to face that direction, and it can be somewhat awkward at times to manage. I'm thinking maybe if they just made it so that you just push left or right on the stick to turn, it'd be easier, but like I said, once you get the hang of the controls, it's not so bad. There's a feel I feel you have to nail before you get comfortable enough, but once you do, there's a fun time to be had screwing up the space-time continuum or whatever the case may be. Time Pilot sports some basic-looking sprites and a plain-looking backdrop of clouds that changes colors for each wave. Some backdrops are brightly colored and can cause some projectiles to blend in with the background, although sometimes the game will recolor the shots, but not always. I do like the temporal explosion effect that occurs when you clear a level. That's a nice touch. I do wish the scrolling was a bit smoother and not choppy, but other than that, it's not a bad looking game. The sound output, however, is kinda meh. The opening jingle's nice, but I wish they had better sound effects. Maybe kept it simple with static noise or whatever, like pew 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 instead of whatever they have for the blasters. As it is, I don't know, it doesn't work for me, brother. Overall, Time Pilot is a fun little challenging shooter, and while ColecoVision version isn't perfect, it still does a fine enough job of replicating the arcade gameplay, and it's just a fun game to boot. All in all, not bad. Not bad at all.